Another improbable win for this Washington Wizards team. The young core continues to get better, continues to develop. How is this happening? Bijan Todd helps us break that down today.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you are locked on to the Washington Wizards. We're your part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team free and available wherever you get your podcast every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, alongside the DC Sports content creating savant Abdullah Ayubi. I'm Ben Strober, and I cover the Washington Wizards for Roundtable IO. And today we're excited to be joined for the first time by Bijan Todd of the Monumental Sports Network. Has covered the team for quite a while now. Bijan, how's it going? Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year, boys. Appreciate you guys having me on, Ben and Abdullah. Excited to talk some Wizards. Ben, I have to say I'm a little disappointed you shaved the mustache, but I appreciate you having me on.
I know, man. I had to do it. It was getting too much. The experiment had to end. It had to end. On today's show, Bijan helps us break down a thrilling win for Washington last night over Milwaukee. CJ McCollum, a clutch fadeaway jumper on the baseline to seal the deal for Washington. We get his input on this young core's development. And then we also discuss some of the concerns that now exist over the team winning too much. We're going to break all of that down today. Bijan, let's just start with last night. The Wizards were up by 10 with around 7 minutes to go in that game. Milwaukee goes on a run. The Wizards end up going cold for a short period of time there. But you have the young guys on this team, including Alex Sarr, who blocks Giannis on that final play, leading to McCollum, who got all the way to the baseline and made the jumper to win the game. With the mix of this young core and the veterans who have stepped up and made some real crucial plays in big moments, how have you seen that group of young players kind of mesh with the veterans as time has gone along here? Because it didn't seem like it was too cohesive earlier in the season between those guys, but I think the chemistry has gotten better amongst those two types of players, if you want to put it that way.
It totally has. And one of the things that I talked about earlier in the season was one of the things that was plaguing the Wizards was their late game execution. Because of the fact that you had these young dudes who hadn't played with the CJs and the Chris Middletons of the world yet, and you had the rookies like Trey and Will and Jamir Watkins who hadn't played in the NBA at all. Hence the reason they had a lot of turnovers and their shooting percentages late in games was not that good. But they've seemed to clean it up. And I think, like you said, Ben, it's just a product of them playing with each other, them getting used to each other. I have to give a shout out to Bub Carrington because his minutes have fluctuated greatly this year. You know, he's been in the starting lineup, he's come off the bench, and he's shooting, I believe, now 44% from three, maybe 45 even at this point. So he has been absolutely a flamethrower recently, and he's been a big reason the Wizards have been winning a little bit. But yeah, when you get guys who are starting to get into the Decembers and the Januaries of the season, that's when you start to see the chemistry build itself up a little bit. Hence the reason that they ended up winning last night, even though I thought they were kind of cooked when they couldn't score for 4 straight minutes there in the fourth quarter. But they picked it back up, and that block by Alex was huge.
Trey Johnson above Carrington, Bijan. Do we have our own Splash Bros in the district? They combined for 10 threes last night, and you saw the shooting competition that they had going into the season, and there was a debate about, well, Trey Johnson thinks there's no debate. He's the best shooter on the team according to him, but do we really have a form of Splash Bros right now and for the future?
I would like to think so, dude. And I have to say, I'm a little surprised that Bub Carrington is shooting it this well from outside because his percentages last year were good from deep. They weren't fantastic. And him shooting 45% right now on the season from downtown is a really good development, I think. And Varun Shankar, who unfortunately is departing us from the Washington Post, he tweeted something important last night that was Bub being this good of a shooter from downtown does change his trajectory as a player, which is a very good development for the Wizards if you can have a guy who can bring the ball up and can shoot from downtown. And Trey Johnson, we knew he was a shooter coming out of Texas. Like, I don't know if we knew that it was going to be this good this early, but he did set a Wizards franchise record last night. I believe it was 9 straight threes made between the Bucks game and the game before that. So, yeah, I would like to think we have some Splash Brothers in town. It just depends on if they can maintain this consistency going forward, but it's definitely a good sign for their development thus far.
I want to get your thoughts on the comment that Trey Johnson made on your podcast. Chase Hughes and Bijan both host the Off the Bench podcast on Monumental Sports. You can check that out on YouTube, and that's available wherever you get your podcasts as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So you guys can go check that out. They had Trey Johnson on for an interview, and he said, Steph Curry knows I'm better as a shooter. He got into the debate. I wanted to get your thoughts on Trey's confidence to make a statement like that, even if he was kind of joking in a way, just the confidence that you've seen from Trey Johnson early on in his career here.
I love it. I love it. And I think it builds into him being able to just fire away when he's on the floor. Like, he does seem to have a green light from this coaching staff, right? And why not? If he's shooting this well from outside, shoot it when you get the ball, dude. What's been interesting is that he's been taking way deeper of threes than, to be honest, I ever saw him take at Texas. Like, he's chucking them from 35, 37 feet in the NBA and making them. I saw a stat that was like from 30 plus feet, I think he's shooting like 50% on those threes or something insane. I don't quote me directly on that, but I think it was something like that. And I love the fact that he's saying that he's a better shooter than Steph. It was someone on Wizards Twitter yesterday who pulled out it might have been Riley Richards or someone who pulled out a crazy picture of Trey Johnson at Steph Curry's camp when he was in high school.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that.
yeah, right. That was crazy. Like, they obviously have met each other before, but I'm really excited for when Steph and Trey meet each other up. I'm not sure exactly when the Warriors come to town or when the Wizards go out to the West Coast, but I love Trey's confidence. And I think confidence as a shooter is the most important thing to developing that consistency. That's why he's been so good thus far, is because he has that shooter's mentality. And him saying that he's better than Steph Curry, he's obviously not yet, because you're not better than the best shooter of all time. But, I mean, who knows? I love the fact that he's confident, and I think him being that confident and having that green light is a great sign for the future of his career.
Yeah. Speaking of Johnson, let's talk about AJ Johnson, Bijan. Revenge game against the Bucks, 8 points off 16 minutes. I mean, the whole year, a lot of his fan club were questioning, where's AJ Johnson? Where's AJ Johnson? Found himself in the rotation last night. What did you make of his minutes against the Bucks?
I liked it, dude. And one of the things that I talked to Brian Keefe about way earlier in the season, must have been like October or something, was how good has AJ Johnson been? How much has he improved at getting past his first guy at the point of attack? Because that was something that he struggled in last year. If he's bringing the ball up, he needs to get past that first defender. And Brian Keefe said he's been improving on it. It's something that he worked on over the offseason. And watching him play, it did seem like that was the case last night in Milwaukee. And I did some go-go stuff earlier this year. I did sideline for them. And the whole time I was watching AJ, I was just like, this guy's too good for the G League. Like, he might not be good enough to get 25, 30 minutes in the NBA, but he's too good for the G League, right? And so when you have guys who can plug in at that spot, at the point guard spot, and give you solid minutes and be efficient from outside too, I think it's an amazing theme this year for the Wizards. And Brian Keefe has said many times, we want multiple guys bringing the ball up. You add AJ into the mix, and it's just the more the merrier. So I was really impressed with his minutes. I kind of want to see him get more minutes going forward here too, because the Wizards want to develop their young guys. So maybe post-trade deadline, we'll see if he gets more minutes going forward.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. And I like the way Keefe has honestly managed the rotations, because they've been really deep. Even though you've had the injuries to Kispert and Kyshawn the past couple of nights, and a couple of other ones like Chris Middleton not playing on back-to-backs, they've given a lot of different opportunities to a lot of different players, which I think has been refreshing to see. I want to move on to the defense here. Bijan, over the last 3 games, their 42% opponent field goal percentage is third best in the NBA. And I know it's kind of a small sample size over the last 3, but you could say over the last 9 or so games where the Wizards have won 5 of those last 9, the defense has been quite improved from what it was early on in the season. We know that was one of the biggest weaknesses of this team. It was one of the worst marks in the NBA. Have you seen them make specific adjustments that have led to them being better defensively, or is it more of like a cohesion thing with this group? How is it happening?
I think it's cohesion, but I also think it's purely a product of their depth. And what I mean by that is they didn't have Bilal Coulibaly to start the year, and that's huge defensively. If you can bring him in and have your second-best defender guard the second-best player on their team, that's a huge aspect of what the Wizards are doing defensively. So having him and Alex Sarr healthy when you can have that paint presence and that rim protector is huge. And I also, like, when I talk about depth, I'm pretty much singling out Justin Champagnie and Jamir Watkins. And I know Watkins' minutes have fluctuated a lot recently. He hasn't played a ton in the last few games, but I love Justin Champagnie on the ball, on the perimeter. I think he's a great defender. He's gritty. He can go up against guys that are way bigger than him. Like, who did they like? They played Memphis, and I don't think he was guarding Jaren Jackson Jr. for that long, but he did switch onto him for a couple of possessions, and it was really good to see him go against a guy that big. And so that's a good part of his game as well. But it's tough to navigate when you have a lot of injuries, but if you have Sarr and Bilal healthy, and then you can bring in a Jamir, and you can bring in a Justin, you can bring in these guys that have length, even Will Riley, like guys who have length on the side, that's a huge aspect of why they've been so good defensively recently. If one of those guys gets injured, I can see that defense going down again, but right now we just got to ride the wave and hope that they stay healthy for long term.
I love Justin Champagnie, Bijan. I
Same.
really think he's the most underrated player in all of basketball. Last night, 33 minutes, 12 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2. I mean, he just fills out the stat sheet. And last night's performance, I just forgot about the fact that there's no Kyshawn George, and that's one of your best young players on this roster. Right now, they're 2-1 against Milwaukee. Do you think the Wizards just have their number? I mean, Giannis was pretty. He was checked out after that last game when he lost. People thought he was done in Milwaukee. I mean, what is it with the Wiz and Bucks? It's kind of similar to last year when they played the Nuggets and swept them.
Yeah, I know. I like to think we have their number because I know, like being a Wizards fan my whole life, it seems like Charlotte has our number. So if we have another team's number, that's really good, and I like to have that happen. I don't know though. I mean, it could be a matchup thing. Also, the Bucks are not as deep as they have been in the past. They've had really good development though with guys like Ryan Rollins and some of their other players, but I like to think that that's the thing too, and I totally agree with your point, Abdullah, that I love Justin Champagnie too, and his rebounding is some of the best I've ever seen for a guy at his size. Like we've seen in games recently. Like I think one was against Memphis, one was against probably San Antonio, where so many times he keeps possessions alive for the Wizards because he crashes offensive boards, unlike any player I've really seen in DC ever, especially at his size. So when you have a guy who can be efficient from outside, guard the perimeter, keep possessions alive on the offensive boards, I think it's huge. I'm not sure how many more times we play Milwaukee this season, but I kind of like that matchup, right? Because it's a good test for Bilal guarding Giannis. It's a good test for Alex having to guard Miles Turner, who's a really good player. And I've liked the matchup too because it's a test for the young guys, but they need to be thrown into the fire anyway if they're going to play in this league. And so I think it's been one of the better matchups I've seen from the Wizards' point of view thus far this season.
It's been some fun games. I would guess they play them one more time because I think you'd play a team 4 times. So it's crazy they've already played them 3 times, and we're just now the first day of January in 2026.
Also, I was going back to the AJ Johnson thing. Was it a coincidence that like he got solid minutes for the first time against his former team? Like, that was kind of
wild. It's wild, right?
Love it.
But I loved it. Yeah, I loved it, and it worked out.
It was completely unexpected to me, but I was excited to see it. All right, when we come back, let's assess the situation here in DC. Just how close is this core getting to fully materializing? We answer that with Bijan when we come back. Friday already feels different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds a little extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank everyone for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today, your first listen of 2026. Hope everyone had a safe and happy new year. We're joined by Bijan Todd today, Wizards reporter for Monumental Sports Network. You can check him out on X at Bijan_Todd. We know that this Wizards team still has a ways to go, obviously. A pivotal draft this upcoming summer for this Wizards team, hoping to add another really talented piece to this young core of players. But from what we've seen in terms of development from this core group of players, and I like to think of your core 3 definitively right now, at least in my opinion, Bijan, being Kyshawn George, Alex Sarr, and Trey Johnson. And then you have your supplemental guys and Carrington and Bilal Coulibaly, who have played really well as of late. Just how close do you feel like they're getting to materializing in a way where they could be just a couple of pieces away from being a playoff caliber team?
Yeah, with the timeline, it's interesting because the way it's always been shaping up is that not this season, but next season, they're hoping to at least be in play-in territory. And I agree with you, Ben, that I think their core 3 are the guys here, Kyshawn, Alex, and Trey. And the whole thing that the Wizards have been doing since Will Dawkins and Michael Winger have taken over, they've made it very clear they're just going to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks when it comes to young talent. Like, you got all the guys that you mentioned, then you tack on guys like AJ Johnson. Is he going to be anything in this league? Cam Whitmore, he's injured now, but can he be something that they can rely on in the future? They only gave up 2 second-round picks for him. So their whole mantra has been get guys in the door, filter them out, see what comes out on the other side. And thus far, it's been working. I really do think that their development plan has been working. Trey Johnson already looks like he's going to be a star. He's only like 30 games into his career. And then how close are they, Ben? It's really hard to say because I don't know how they're going to manage this massive amount of cap space they have this summer. They have over 100 million cap space. Are they going to use that to try to take a big swing on a guy like Giannis or a guy like Anthony Davis or something? Maybe. Or you could do what David Aldridge says they should do, which is just pick on the teams that are in salary cap hell. Go after the second apron teams. Go after the Clevelands and the Orlandos and the teams and the not OKC because they're actually out of it, but and not Boston either. But teams like that where they're going to have to start shedding talent in order to avoid the second apron. Go after the Darius Garlands, go after the Jonathan Isaacs, whoever you may think of, and see how close you get. The Wizards do need to get, I think, better defenders overall and more depth in the paint because I love Marvin Bagley, but you do need, I think, a better defender both inside and outside than him. But either way, how close are they? It's hard to tell. I would like to think they're maybe 2 or 3 years away from making a real run in the East, but it depends on their development. How can they keep guys in the door without going into the second apron? These guys are all going to need to get paid at some point. So how long do you have to keep them here before you have to start giving them 9-figure contracts? Not sure. But next year, if they're in play-in territory, I think that's exactly what the timeline was from the get-go. And then they're going to be off to the races after that. So that cap space is going to be huge for sure.
I'm good off AD, Bijan. I think just the injuries, it's just at this point, it's becoming a recurring theme with him.
Probably the same thing with Garland, too. He can't stay healthy either.
Yeah, going back to the young core, Alex Sarr, Bijan, how impressed are you with this year 2 development? Because after a couple Summer League games last year, people thought this dude was the worst player to ever play in NBA history. And just recently a 6-block game, career high. And defensively, offensively, his ability, he's only going to get better from here. What do you make of his year so far?
Dude, it's night and day from last year. Like, he's a different player. I think he got the memo from last year, which was just please get into the paint, dude. Like, you're 7 foot, you're 220, get into the paint. And he didn't do that as much last year. And this year he is doing it. Like I was doing some research on this earlier this week, and I think his average shot distance last year was like 14 feet or something. And this year it's like 9 feet. So he's playing in the paint. He's using his body. He's going after dudes, which he did not do last year. Last year he was passive. This year he's active. And he's going after the Joel Embiids and the Jaren Jacksons and the Giannis's, and he's putting his shoulder into their chest and trying to get his way into the paint. And it's been really awesome to see. I honestly did not expect his efficiency to be this good. Like, he's still shooting pretty well from outside, even though he's not really taking as many attempts. But his paint efficiency has been way better than it was last year. He had those 6 blocks, like you mentioned, Abdullah, and his defense is as good, if not better, than it was last year. So the fact that he's changed his game to be more conducive to a modern-day big man, where you can play your back to the basket, but you can still shoot from outside and be a post presence and be a rim protector, I think it's been great. And personally, I think it's been the best development overall for the Wizards this season. I think it's been better than Kyshawn. I think it's been better than Bub, because Alex is a guy who you're going to rely on in the paint going forward, because every championship team needs a guy like that. You need a Chet, right? You need like a Kristaps Porzingis in Boston. You need everything like that if you're going to win a championship, and Alex is that guy for the Wizards.
I always felt like with Alex, it was a him versus him kind of thing. Like, the only thing that could stop him from being a really good player in this league was himself. Not taking good enough shots, not being aggressive enough. But he seems like he has fixed, or he's well on his way to completely fixing a lot of those issues going forward. So that's been a big thing for his development going forward. Kyshawn George last year, at times you saw the flashes with the guy, but maybe in a way almost similar to what we've seen with Will Riley this year, where it was more like spot minutes for the guy. You didn't get to fully see him unleash himself. Were you surprised to see him come on the scene this year and play as well as he did and maybe establish himself as this team's second best young player? Or is this something you kind of anticipated being a possibility?
Was I surprised? A little, actually, yeah. I didn't think he was going to be this good in year 2 because, like you said, last year, Ben, we saw flashes of like the shooting. We saw flashes of the defense. We saw flashes of the connective passing and the playmaking, but he could never do it for longer than like 2 games at a time, right? Like, he would have 2 great games and then take 2 games off, et cetera. And this year he's been doing it with a hell of a lot more responsibility on the ball than he had last year. Like, he has been the guy who has been running the Wizards offense when he's been healthy. He's been doing the pick and rolls. He's been doing the ball handling. He's been bringing the ball up. He's been getting guys into their sets. He's been making the first pass in the half court. And so I have been a little impressed and a little surprised with how consistent he's been this year with that added responsibility, because you cannot minimize how big of a difference that is for a player who just turned 21, I believe, to come into the league as a rookie and have spot minutes. And then second year, you're the guy all of a sudden. Here you go. Here are the keys. Do what you have to do on offense. And he's been doing it. And so I think it's really good. And he's crazy athletic. Like we were talking, like Chase, my colleague, was talking to a scout recently, and he said Kyshawn George is going to be the best player out of these three, meaning out of him, Bub, and Alex. And that was last year, I think, before we even knew what Kyshawn George was going to be. And thus far, it's not looking like a bad prediction because the minutes that Kyshawn's been given, he's been doing so well with them, and it's been really impressive. It's just like stay healthy and stay consistent. And thus far, he's been doing it. He's been shooting efficiently from downtown as well. So it's been really good to see.
How different, Bijan, do you think this Wizards team is going to look post-trade deadline? Because we kind of saw it last year where the team was playing more fluidly and A.J. Johnson had a great game against the Brooklyn Nets. Do you see something more like that?
Yeah, so let me preface this by saying even though I do work for Monumental, I have absolutely no insider knowledge as to anything the front office is thinking right now. I have no idea what they're thinking about anything. But last year it was tough because I know a lot of fans were like, why are we playing Kyle Kuzma so much? Well, you got to play Kyle Kuzma because you're going to trade him and you need teams to realize his value, right? And so they're kind of doing the same thing right now. I'm not saying they're definitely going to trade anybody or definitely going to keep anybody, but the fact that you acquired an expiring contract in CJ McCollum as part of that Jordan Poole trade means that more than likely you are going to want to shed that salary. And so if that's at the trade deadline or if that's postseason or whatever, same thing with Chris Middleton, you don't really know what they're going to do, but you play them because you need to increase their value one way or another. Like there are a ton of guys on this team who could be on the chopping block, but who also, if you keep them, could be solid pieces for the future. Like Corey Kispert, if he stays on this team long-term, he could be an absolute sniper from downtown and stay as one of the key rotational players for Brian Keefe after this year. So in terms of how it's going to look after the deadline, I'm not sure. I do think the team's going to get a lot younger overall after the deadline. They're probably going to try to acquire some more expiring contracts and some more picks if they can. It's just going to depend on how they do it. But there are teams, again, who are going to be in salary cap hell who you can pick on a little bit after the deadline and going into the summer. So I'm not sure which team I would compare it to, but definitely something to monitor, especially as we get closer to February when the deadline comes.
It's going to be an exciting time to see how the organization tries to take that next step, whether that happens at the trade deadline or we see a big move made in the offseason. It's going to be something to follow, a lot to be excited about here in 2026. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about this conversation that is starting to brew with the Wizards winning so many games as of recently. Is it a concern with the top 8 protected pick? We tackle that when we come back. So, Bijan, last night, as you scroll Twitter, as one normally does after a big Wizards win, because you want to see all the reactions, you want to see what people are saying, you want to see people going crazy for Trey Johnson, breaking a franchise record for most consecutive threes made by a rookie. Bub Carrington putting up 20 points. Alex Sarr putting up 20 points and 4 blocks, including a clutch one on Giannis. But at the end of the day, you're going to see a lot of this type of fan that says, wait a second, we've won 3 of the last 4 games, 5 of the last 9. We have to make sure we have our first-round pick because it's top 8 protected. So some people have almost been concerned with the amount of winning the team has done. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that conversation, how this alludes to just overall team development and culture wins.
Yeah, the Wizards knew going into this season that they would have to play with one hand tied behind their back with that top 8 protection that's going to New York if they can't convey. So, no, I'm not worried about the Wizards losing their pick. First of all, this is Adam Silver's NBA, okay? So if the Wizards had the worst record, they would probably end up getting the 5th pick anyway, right, like Utah did last year. Not going to take anything for granted with Adam Silver. But the way the lottery works, I believe, is that the Wizards currently have the 4th worst record, which is crazy because they had the worst record like a week and a half ago. But either way, 4th worst record means I think the lowest they can fall is 7th. And then if you take the 5th worst record, your chance of getting the 8th pick falls to around 10-ish%. Actually, I think with the 4th worst record, you can get the 8th pick, but it's only like 2%. Anyway, 5th worst record, that jumps to 10%. 6th worst record, it jumps up to like 20%, and that's where you start to get maybe we shouldn't be in that realm. But no, the Wizards know that they need to keep that pick. Like that is not an option to convey that pick to New York. Obviously, it depends on lottery luck, but if the Wizards stay where they're at right now, between the 3rd and the 4th, 5th worst record, I don't see any situation where that pick is going to end up falling to 8. Obviously, mathematically, it's a possibility, but the Wizards front office and coaches and everybody are very aware that they need to keep that pick. So they're and another thing is that this team, this roster, even though everything we're talking about with how good the development has been, this is not a roster that's going to compete for the play-in, right? Like we're not in danger of making it that high. So all you have to do, pretty much in my opinion, is continue to do what you're doing. Play the young guys, let them take their lumps, let them mess up on the court, and see where their development goes. Give Trey Johnson a bunch of minutes, put A.J. Johnson in there, and this team will start to show you that their development has been exactly what we've been hoping it's going to be, while not playing into that risk of losing that top 8 protection. So I'm not worried, and I don't think the Wizards are worried either.
Speaking of this draft, Bijan, who's your number one guy? Because there's a lot of talent, and a lot of people are claiming that even if you fall, God forbid, to 4 or 5, you can still get a really game-changing player that could alter this franchise's trajectory. Who's your number one guy?
Dude, it's really tough. Everyone's loving AJ DeBanza so far, and I am too. Like, I really like him. But if Darren Peterson's on the board, I'm taking Darren Peterson. Like, you can't go wrong with the 6'5" point guard who does everything well, including shooting from outside. The only thing is he's not playing. He's got that hamstring issue. He hasn't suited up for Kansas nearly as much as we wanted to see. But, man, AJ DeBanza is going to be different. Like, he could play in the NBA today and I think put up 12 and 6, right? Like, he has the body of an NBA third small forward, 3 or 4. He actually has the body of a 4, but he plays the 3. Crazy athleticism, can get to his spots, can shoot from pretty much anywhere, really physical. Honestly, I really like Caleb Wilson, too, from UNC. I would actually have him probably at my 3 above Cam Boozer, but I like Cam Boozer a lot, too. So anywhere in the top 4, I think you're getting a dude. I think you're getting a guy who can stick in the NBA and be an all-star. But Darren Peterson's my one, man. I can't go wrong with Darren Peterson. Do you guys have DeBanza above him? Ben, I think we might have talked about this. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think DeBanza won me over with that game against Clemson where he outscored him in the second half. And I'll be completely honest, I don't watch a ton of college basketball right now. Like, I'll grind all the tape and stuff when the Wizard season is over because it'll be draft season. We can have more conversations about it. But just from a limited sample size where I got to watch him, I was like, wow, the ability this dude to show to take over a basketball game, I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of mentality. That's why I was really high on Trey Johnson, actually, because I saw the way he backpacked that Texas team last year and some of the efforts he did. I love a dude that has that dog mentality, that wants to be great, that like knows that he has to be the dude for his team to be successful. I like that kind of mentality, and obviously it'd be different in the NBA because you're on a real NBA roster that has a ton of guys that are almost as talented as you, if not more. So it's different from that realm, but I like somebody that has that type of mentality, that type of ability. So I guess he did kind of win me over from that perspective.
What about Abdullah? Let me get Abdullah's take. Abdullah, do you have DeBanza or Peterson?
DeBanza, Bijan. I think he's a superstar, box office. I think he's just great. He does everything right, and with that last name, sometimes you can just look at the name. It's like that he's the guy. That's him.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Good point.
Bijan, if they land one of these guys in the draft, we asked Nathan Grubel, who's an NBA draft analyst expert for the Locked On Network, this question the other day, and I'll tell you what he said after I get your answer. If they land one of these guys, one of your top guys on the board, like Peterson or DeBanza or Caleb Wilson, are they a play-in team next year?
I think if they land one of those guys and they use that $100 million they got, yeah. I think if they use the $100 million and they get depth and they get a really good wing defender and they get a point guard, like a true honest-to-God point guard on this team, absolutely. That could be a Darren Peterson, but if they get a free agent point guard, absolutely. I think 7 to 10 is absolutely within the range of what this team can do next year.
Especially in the East, Bijan.
Yeah, in the East next year you got Tatum coming back and you got Halliburton coming back, but it's still not as good as the West, so everything's a possibility next year. I think yes.
The West is an absolute gauntlet, man. It's ridiculous. I couldn't even imagine the Wizards in the situation they're in and being out West. I feel like it would look even more tumultuous than it has at times. But that Nathan said the exact same thing. I completely agree with that. And I think most of the people I've talked to, that cover the team, agree that the play-in should be a realistic goal for this team next year. There shouldn't be an expectation that the team bottoms out for a 4th year. I mean, regardless of lottery luck or whatever happens, it just seems like most NBA rebuilds, Bijan, it feels like 3 years of bottoming out is kind of the model that's been built. I always allude to Houston kind of doing it exactly like that, winning around 20 games per year for 3 years. Then they won 41 games, and then they won over 50 last year. So I think the Wizards are trying to model that type of trajectory. Do you kind of see them similar to any other organizations that have gone through successful rebuilds? I guess other than OKC, because I know they're very similar from that sense because like Dawkins is an OKC guy. But are there any other teams that stick out to you that the Wizards have kind of modeled this rebuild after?
Yeah, Houston's a great one, Ben. I love the fact that Houston has been doing this and drafting right. Like the one draft pick that you could say they missed on maybe was Jalen Green, but then they deal him for Kevin Durant, so you can't really go wrong with that either. You don't really want to be compared to Philly with the whole trust the process thing, and also getting VJ Edgecombe after not being that bad of a team last year. I thought was kind of ridiculous, but you make the right picks. You draft Jared McCain, you draft Edgecombe, you draft these guys. That's an organization you can model yourself off of. This is not something that I think the Wizards have been doing, but I respect the way Indiana did it because they never bottomed out, and yet they made really smart moves and they drafted really good guys on their team that came in, and they also made really good trades for guys like Nemhard and Neesmith. They brought them in, and they ended up being huge pieces as to why they went to the finals. So other organizations that have done it that are currently being successful, I mean, I don't know, man. It's hard to say. Like I like what Orlando has been doing a lot. Like they bottomed out for a little bit there too. And they're some of their players are not playing as well as you would expect, but I like what Orlando's been doing. OKC obviously is just like a genius organization. But yeah.
I mean, did you ever imagine a couple of years ago that Detroit would be the top of the Eastern Conference?
No, I didn't, because I didn't know that Cade Cunningham was going to become like a superstar. I know he was going to become good, but not this good.
Sometimes you just never know. Like, I don't believe the Wizards have that true number one superstar on this roster, but I'm not going to say it's never going to happen with a guy like Sarr or George or even Trey Johnson, because sometimes it just happens like that. Players develop even beyond what their people thought their ceiling was. And, I just don't think you can definitively say they don't have that type of player yet. I would lean toward them not, probably, but you kind of never know in these situations, right?
Yeah, you never know. And, Chase brought up this point that if you compare Alex Sarr's sophomore year to Jaren Jackson's sophomore year, he clears Jaren Jackson in basically every stat category. He has more blocks, more points, more threes, more assists, more rebounds. And that's a defensive player of the year, right? So if you can get a guy like Sarr and develop him into that guy, he doesn't need to be like the dog on the team. Like, like Abdullah said, that could be Trey, that could be Bub, that could be one of these dudes. Is one of the Wizards on the team currently the guy? I'm not so sure. But then you bring in a DeBancer, you bring in a Peterson, and you have one of them. Or you use $100 million, you get one of them.
I was going to say, we have a guy. He's just playing for BYU right now. We got to wait a couple months. But Alex Sarr, Bijan, real quick, I think obviously Wembanyama's in his own category. He's just an alien. After Wemby, I think Alex Sarr, when it comes to young centers, there's not many guys. You can say Şengün because of his offensive ability, but I mean, Alex Sarr, year two, young guy who played overseas, he is adjusting to today's NBA. Once he gets a point guard, the pick and rolls, I mean, I think the sky's the limit.
That's what I'm saying. You have to remind yourself that Alex Sarr has been doing this without a true point guard on the team. Like I know Bub Carrington can play point guard. I know CJ can play point guard. He has not had an honest-to-God point guard thus far in his Wizards tenure. That's a great point, Abdullah. But you got that Wemby tier, which is just Wemby. And then you got Sarr, you got Şengün. I think you got Chet in there, right, in terms of young centers. But Sarr might be up there because I do think he's as good of a defender as Chet Holmgren, if not maybe slightly better this year. Şengün is unbelievable. I think he'll be in that category too. But the race between those three, between who's going to be the second best center in the NBA for years to come, is going to be really interesting. Sarr is absolutely in that category when you combine his defense and his efficiency.
It makes me happy because AB at one point, I think before the season, said there might be a possibility if Sarr develops the way he has this year, like we were saying, just even if. Yeah. And he could be like a top 8 center in the league. And people thought AB was crazy for saying that. And now he actually is
a top 8
center in the league right now.
You would think I was the dumbest person ever the way people reacted. And it's like the proof is in the pudding. The kid is really good. We saw what he did in the summer league. Why would it not translate in year two?
I was actually on the same train, dude. I was saying the same stuff last year. Everyone was like, man, this kid's not playing the right way. I'm like, don't worry. He's going to play the right way. He's going to be good. So you and I are on the same page, AB. We got this together.
It's so much more fun talking about this team when guys are developing and the core is playing the way it is. I think we've seen great signs in terms of development from this Washington Wizards team. So that's something to look forward to as we continue through the beginning of 2026 here. Bijan, any final thoughts from you, my guy?
No, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Happy to come on again. Happy New Year, and hopefully the Wizards continue winning and get Darren Peterson or AJ DeBanza. And if they get the number one pick, you and I, like the three of us, are going to go out and have a beer and decide what the right move is.
Yeah, we can go to like Rocket Bar or something, like right outside Cap One.
Dude, can I tell you something? This is going to blow your mind. I've never actually been to Rocket Bar. I've been to every bar outside of Capital One Arena except for that place.
That's interesting. I feel like that's like the spot, right?
I know, right? It's crazy. I'm more of an Irish Channel guy myself, but we'll go to Rocket Bar and we'll decide who the number one pick should be.
Yeah, we'll go. We'll have a drink and we'll debate all day. Wizards back in action tomorrow against the Brooklyn Nets at home at Capital One Arena. Us three we'll all convene and we'll talk draft picks tomorrow. There, Bijan, we thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Happy New Year to you as well. That'll do it for us today on the Locked On Wizards podcast. Special thanks to Bijan Todd. Check him out on X, Bijan_Todd, reporter for Monumental Sports Network. For my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober. We'll talk to you tomorrow night.